Boy, I sure do hope I'm in frame or this is gonna be really embarrassing. Sup, Bruskefki? For centuries, artists have been improving their craft by copying the work of those who come before them. And as the saying goes, good artists copy, but great artists steal. Which is the excuse I'm using to start this new series where I blatantly steal the ideas of other creators for content. In this video, I'm going to be stealing from the excellent Bill over at the Bill Making Stuff channel. Channel link in the description. You should totally check him out when you get the chance. I'm going to be attempting to make a couple of his bead bots, which are robots made out of beads and... Huh? What the? I don't know the dog. Whose dog is this? Hey, whose dog is this? Sorry, man, I know it's wet and raining outside, but you can't just be sneaking into people's houses like that. What a world we're coming to where random dogs will just sneak into people's houses and muddle through their things. Well, that was weird. Anyway, moving on from that. To start with, I need to secure a supply of beads to work with. In keeping with this episode's themes, I did break into Bill's house and steal all of these beads. Unfortunately for me, Bill keeps all of his best bits locked up in a very secure safe. So I was only able to secure his dregs. They're not the best bits, but I should be able to work with them, which is what your dad said. After getting my haul sorted, I got to work preparing the bases. These wood discs were originally lids from a couple of candles I got at Dollar Tree, which from what I understand is the American version of pond land. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not very good with foreign words. I started by tearing up the phone and then gluing it back together with some super glue, trying to harden the foam and create some random variation for terrain. I also glued back on the scraps of foam to give even more variation and elevation. After letting the glue dry, I gave the whole thing a coating of Mod Podge and black paint, followed by a sprinkling of various sized grit. After setting those aside to dry, I got to work on the first of my bead bots. For the first one, I wanted something kind of octopus-like with long twisting tentacles. I didn't have any armature wire, but I did have this floral wire that I think I made work. I did double it up and twist the strands together to add some extra girth and stiffness to it, just like how your dad likes it. Starting with a wood bead, I cut it in half with a hacksaw and then drilled into a larger bead before gluing them together with my wire. I did that 3 times to create the legs of the bot. I used a combination of super glue and baking soda for this. For those of you who don't know, baking soda acts as a catalyst for super glue and will make it dry almost instantly. It's also a good way to add extra surface area for the glue to hold onto and to fill gaps. After getting the legs secured, I started threading on the beads for them. I only glued down the last of the beads to start with since I wanted to still be able to pose the legs. Once I was confident that the beads were secure, I trimmed the wire and positioned the legs on the base. After I got it in a position I was happy with, I came back in and glued the beads on the legs together. It's important to remember to keep your workspace clean while doing this. It'd be really embarrassing to leave a huge mess while you're working. Once the legs were secured, I moved on to drilling the holes for the 5 upper limbs. I then threaded some wire strands and glued them all in place. After getting the arms added, I decided that I wanted to bulk up the center a bit more, so I added some bead halves around the outside and a rhinestone to the center. I'd also like to remind everyone to work in a well-ventilated area. I used a lot of super glue on this project, and I think I may have poisoned myself with the fumes. I was actually pretty sick for a couple of days after working on this. I decided to pose the arms before adding the beads this time, since I felt the pose was a little more important here. For the arms, I used some beads with inset gems in them that I was hoping would add some extra texture to the tentacles and look like suction cups or eyes or something like that. Once the arms were finished, I moved on to cutting out some panels from EVA foam and attaching them to the central beads to create metal plating. While I was doing this, I also decided that I wanted to add some extra details to the insides of the legs. Once the panels were in place, I grabbed some small spheres to use as rivets. They aren't exactly the right size for this, but it's not the size of your bits, it's how you use them. Or at least that's what your dad says. Finally, I added some rhinestones to the ends of each tentacle. Moving on to my second bead bot, I decided I wanted to do something smaller, something more in line with like a swarm of ants. To start with, I built up the base some more. I cut apart a cheap squirt gun to create some wreckage for my ant bots to be crawling over / scavenging. I carefully cut out some more of the foam on the base so I could bury the new parts into it. I continued to work up the base, gluing squirt gun parts anywhere I thought they'd look good. I was mostly working on intuition, adding parts anywhere that looked a little bit too plain. I paid extra attention to the open ends of the squirt gun, wanting to make sure they didn't stand out too much and to hide the interior details of the gun. I was also trying to add some details that looked like the internal mechanisms of whatever machine this used to be. When scratch building like this, I think it's really important to add enough detail to hide the original purpose of the parts. When you look at your build, you want people to see your model and not all of the individual parts used to make it. In my experience, the more you can do to cut, sand, and rearrange your parts, the better. The more you can change the context of the bits, the less recognizable they'll become. It's also important to keep in mind that painting will do a lot to tie everything together. At the moment, all of the disparate clashing colors from the different parts makes everything stand out a lot more than it will once it's painted. I used a couple of zip ties to add some extra texture and panels to the build. I also used some wire, paper clips, and spare green stuff to create piping / wiring for the internal mechanisms. Whenever I'm doing a project with green stuff, I'll use any extra that I have to make cabling for stuff like this. Once I was happy with the general shape, I used some aquarium gravel to help build up some more of the landscape, and then went around the outside of my model with Mod Podge and more of my texture grit to really make it look like it's sunk down into the ground. Now that the base was ready, I could start working on my ant bots. I started by preparing some twisted wire. I needed 3 wire pairs per bot. I threaded them through the open hole on these faceted beads. For their eyes, I started by cutting the tips off of these single-use glue bottles and then adding a single small sphere into the center of the eye. For their claws, I started by pulling apart these small metal rings. Then I carefully glued them onto these small rhinestones. Now that I had the claw ready, I could glue them onto the end of the ant bot's legs and add a second gem to the other side. It's a good thing this process isn't super tedious, or I would have been really annoyed at having to repeat it 6 times per bot. Once I had the claws done, I could pose and glue each bot onto the base. While I was doing this, I also decided to add an extra hemisphere to the build. Once I had the bots positioned where I wanted, I added a layer of super glue to hopefully help them hold their position. I also decided to add an extra piece to the second bot so we could have something to carry. The third bot I positioned on top of everything. I decided to have it climbing on top of the other 2 since that's something that real ants do, and I thought it'd be funny. I ended up having an extra bot that I didn't use since I thought the base was already getting a little bit too crowded. Since it's time to prime the 2, I'm going to try doing this trick again. And Damn it. One of these days I'm gonna figure out how to do that correctly. Now it's paint time, and since it's paint time, that means it's story time. I imagine these two both come from a single, completely original setting of mine called the Sewer Grounds. Now, the Sewer Grounds is a rundown sci-fi planet set in the distant future of 2002. Everything in the Sewer Grounds is run down and covered in a generous layer of crust. And the people who live there have banded together into several different factions to struggle for survival. A long time ago, before the Sewerlands were known as the Sewerlands, the planet used to be populated by the upper class of a super advanced alien species. Now, the number 8 was very important to them culturally, so they created these 8-limbed robots to serve as guards and to use for entertainment. These Octobots were built to be incredibly resilient and to be self-repairing. As a result, they still roam the Sewerlands, looking to remove any trespassers from their long-dead master's land. One of the main factions of the Sewerlands are the Crusters. Now, the Crusters worship the crust of the Sewerlands and have built their entire society around scavenged materials. Since it's so dangerous to wander the Sewerlands, some Crusters have started to utilize these small, ant-like robots to scour the land and bring back any valuable scraps they can find. They're made to be as simple as possible since they're routinely getting destroyed while searching out for new finds. The end results of my beadbots are pretty cool, and I think they have earned themselves a place on the shelf of OK miniatures. I'm very happy with how these have turned out, and I think I like both of them, but for different reasons. I'm interested in what you think is better, the Octobot or the ants. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you check out the Bill Making Stuff channel and consider giving your support at patreon.com/BillMakingStuff. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing for my next video, but if you want to see it, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, remember that we all have our own hobby. Dog, no, stop that. Down, bad dog, bad.